without any preamble, I'd like to invite you to participate in an interpersonal contemplation. So here, you're going to, I'll tell you the rules again. If you don't want to talk to anyone, because it's still morning, you just kind of make your face and posture like this, and then and if they try, you say, I'm feeling really inward right now, and they have to leave you alone. It's an introvert-friendly place. You couldn't be any other way if I'm at the helm. So, but if you do want to play, then you make your face kind of like this. Maybe cork up one corner or the other. And here's your discussion topic. What is it in your experience that is unconditional? What is it in your experience that is unconditional? Ready? Find a buddy. See what they know. Okay. We were asking ourselves, what is it in your experience that is unconditional? What in your experience is unconditional? And did you come up with anything? Dave and I had death. Just to start it off, Christmassy.
The love of a pet, especially a dog.
Yeah, right. So if you had a dog, a good dog, you know,
Like
come on, nothing's gonna stand in the way of that love. Okay, and then what else, Jay?
My son.
Your son.
There's times I like to just.
Yeah, you don't like him.
Yeah,
But you love him. Yeah, for sure. Others? Other notions? Yeah, forgiveness. Forgiveness can be, it's not easy to get there all the time, right? But when you catch it, that's an unconditional thing.
It's like the sun. I guess that phrase,
You're-
the sun always getting.
You're getting where I'm going. So it's working. Yeah, cool.
Need for security, like all of the basic needs being met, but just the feeling of like being secure, stable.
Yeah, so like our basic needs, you know, that stuff doesn't just really make that go away. Cool. So, what I wanted to talk about today, this idea of be a sun and not a moon. There are many esoteric ways. Oh, let's see, somebody comment. Surfing is unconditional. Whether you catch a wave or not, you're still out there. So yeah, and this kind of comes where I'm going. You'll hear about a little bit of like in Buddhism they have this idea of like unconditional presence or unconditional compassion. And we'll talk a little bit about that idea. So there are a lot of ways we can go about this notion that I wanted to get across when I had this idea, be a sun and not a moon. And I was thinking about that, and then yesterday I was scrolling Linda's Facebook, and she put up this meme which says, never stop being a good person because of bad people. And I was like, oh, that's the whole thing. Nailed it. Sermon done. You can all go have an espresso on me. We're set, because this is the idea. And we'll talk about it. It may or may not be true, this idea that like the Buddhists have, that there's some sort of goodness or compassionate presence. The Hindus obviously have that too. That is actually unconditional, but it's pretty functionally true. Like there are ways that this can be true in our lives. No matter how many bad people are around you, it's still always possible for you to sort of bootstrap yourself up and be a good person. That's not dependent on exterior conditions. And that's a really fun place to start. So, okay. So our capacity, the main point today is that our capacity to act from our inner goodness is completely up to us. Right? How effective we are, that's all conditional. But the capacity to act from our values, from that seed of goodness, that's on us. That's always in our hands. And so this is the title of the sermon, it's something that radiates out this way, like the sun. Our goodness, our contribution. It's not something that is reflective, like a moon. Okay, and then still, this might be a little like, I relate to this, and And I'm like, that sounds good. I do want to believe that, but are you sure that sometimes like hardship makes goodness impossible? Like we might have this kind of doubt. I have this kind of doubt in my mind. I was listening to a book by a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, and he was talking about this study he was involved in. So he has this cute way that he's describing being put in an fMRI machine and how strange that is to be in this cone of noise. But then you're in the cone of noise, and who they chose were people with 10, 20, 40,000 hours of meditation under their belt. And so you're in there, and then finally you drop down into your place of meditation. They're monitoring your brain, and they know when you've gotten to your sort of meditative zone. And then they start playing disturbing sounds, like people screaming and car accidents, and like just things that for most of us, they would really terribly disturb us. And for most of us, if you put us in an fMRI, well, like if you put me in an fMRI, my brainwaves might be all distressed anyway, because I don't like small caves with noise being emitted at me. But then if I did meditate and you started playing people screaming at me, you'd probably see, as the brain scans of most non-meditators, you would slip into this pattern of distress or anxiety or discomfort, even aversion and anger. These meditators, what they found is that the centers in their brain associated with maternal love and then joy and compassion, that's full. That joyful feeling of maternal love, and paters and maters can both feel maternal love, right? There's a quality of joy in it. And so their brains would light up. They played this like person screaming as if they're in pain, and then their brains would light up with maternal love centers. And then that would cascade into these joy centers, and then that would cascade into bringing more like unconditional compassion, the brain pattern associated with unconditional compassion. And the cool thing was, it wasn't that they just put them in there and said, like, meditate on compassion. They put them in there, and when they were exposed to this disturbing stimuli, their brains got more compassionate, more maternal, and then more calm and joyful, this flow state of both silent and sort of radiant, like the sun that we're talking about. So it's this really interesting thing because it flips a number of scripts on its head. One is just the script about what meditation is for, which is like, that it's retreat from the rest of your life so you can build yourself up, and then you go back and you've got reserves. For these practitioners, of course it is that sometimes, but they've done enough of that their meditation is actually bolstering them in the face of discomfort. It's taking them out into life, into disturbing circumstances, and it's changing the way they respond to it. And the other script that it flips is, I think that for many of us, and it's based on experience, but we sort of assume that human nature is such that if you wear it down or expose it to enough sort of challenges, then it gets its capacity for love and joy and compassion getting weaker. And that's actually not necessarily so. We've got capacities for joy and compassion inherent in us that can, with training, learn to shine forth even stronger when we're exposed to discomfort. So this is something really kind of cool, and it goes with that. It's a nice sentiment. No matter how many bad people, be a good person. And I know minds like mine are like, that is really cool in most cases. And then what about this? And what we find is that there are capacities in the human mind that even in the what about this can still rise up and generate compassion, love, and joy in a radiant way. So that's cool. There's a part of us that with training could be open-hearted and radiant regardless of what circumstances were coming at us. So it's not necessarily that we're unconditional yet, but there's a part of us, in Unitarian Universalism, we call it our inherent worth and dignity. And not all of us claim our inheritance. You may have found there are people who they decided not to enact the dignity that comes from compassion and those maternal vibes inside. But if we decide to step into that inheritance, it may actually be who we are, that regardless of what conditions and circumstances are around us, we have a core of love that can shine out. Okay, this is both advanced and completely basic. So don't get me wrong, the injunction to be a son, to be a light in the world, doesn't say that that's going to be easy. Did you ever try it? Right? One of my Tibetan Buddhist masters says, like, be careful if you make these vows, right? Like there's a vow you can take, like, I'm going to be unconditionally loving. And then the universe, I don't know if you believe that there might be like a universe that sends you tests or something like that, but take that vow and you will find out there's a universe that will send you to the, I'm going to be unconditionally loving. And every jerk in the universe comes out of the woodwork to see if you were telling the truth. So nobody said that it's going to be easy. But what's cool is that it is possible, particularly with this type of training. But what's neat is that there are moms in the world and soldiers and German shepherds who are like mostly kind of going along ordinary, and then they've overcome tremendous fear or tremendous obstacles because their heart woke up just in an instant and said, somebody needs my help, right? And then, that's heroism, but normally we don't think about that. Part of my goal today is to reverse it. We get every message that, oh, to be happy, you're going to need this new kind of Tide Pod. And to be happy, you're going to need to get these needs met. You're going to need to get these needs met. And that is important, but it's not the only way we're wired. There's something else that happens that we can be happy, joyful, and compassionate, even in the most horrible of circumstances. So, it's very basic, but it also takes a bit of training. Maslow's pyramid is up here because you can see if you were trained in psychology or any of this kind of developmental stuff, there's an extra step on the pyramid than you may have gotten in college. So back when I studied Maslow, it ended at self-actualization. Did anybody learn this stuff? Yeah, so self-actualization is kind of like, you got your own job, and you know who you want to be in the world, and you're being it. And what's cool, I found out, how much time do I have to talk about this? Because I'm a little bit excited about it, but it's not totally necessary. I found out that Maslow's research, he noted people have all of these needs, right? We have these physiological needs, pretty basic. And then it's built as a pyramid because in general, it's once you get the physiological needs met, that you go and you move on to getting the safety needs met. And then once you get the safety needs met, you go and move on to love and belonging. In a lot of cases. These often will go other ways, but they're kind of foundational, right? If you are not alive, you cannot seek love and belongingness. So, and then, coming on, moving into esteem, and then self-actualization. And the research he found, I don't know what batteries, we better wrap this up. He found a lot of research that led toward this. And then he also found that people had these sort of self-transcendent needs, but he hadn't yet found the sort of biological correlate to that. To him, this was all spiritual. So there was all the way into self-actualization. This is, oh yes, of course, this is evolutionarily sound and blah, blah, blah. And then there are these weirdos who can fast as a protest because of their beliefs and totally disregard physiological needs and say you would be ostracized by the community and have everybody hate them, and then they lose all their muscle tone, so their self-esteem must go down. And what the heck are they doing? And he thought, oh, that's spiritual. So he had this whole theory of these self-transcending needs, but he didn't put it in his book yet because he couldn't argue it because he didn't have a materialist kind of basis for it yet. So by the time he found that, his work was already accepted in business schools all over the place. And so the Maslow we know ends at self-actualization. But in fact, there's a later book that came out that talks all about these, this chart says intrinsic values or self-transcending needs, which are actually the apex of this pyramid. So what's cool for me is that it contrasts these two views that we have in the world. Like we have the view often presented by religion, which is be self-effacing and give yourself up to the greater whatever. And then many of us woke up and said, the It's not something to self-efface onto. And so we started to look like, well, what can we prove? You get Maslow's work up to about self-actualization. It says, like, oh, the greatest thing is like find out what kind of job you want to do. We've got career counselors in high school for that. And then how much money will you need to make to live in Silicon Valley? It's like 200,000 years, if you're 40 right now. And then you'll find a job that sort of matches those two, and then you'll get a partner, and then you'll have done the Maslow cycle. So self-actualized. Good for you. Good for you. And it paints a picture that human happiness is like the completion of a human is when you've got a good me-centric life. You've got this me-centric life all dialed in. Oh, I know my car, and I know which gas station has the best gas. And of course, I follow some ethics, and but it may actually be true. The later research shows, and what we're finding now through the dreams of the hippies at Esalen on human potentials are all coming true with fMRI studies and stuff, is that the epitome, the top point of human development is actually something that does have a well-functioning ego, that can hold a job, and then it goes on to transcend itself. And what's neat is when we get to this transcendent level, you'll find that people's qualities become unconditional. Right? I'll read to you from Maslow. The fully developed, parentheses, and very fortunate human being, working under the best conditions, tends to be motivated by values which transcend his self. They are not selfish anymore in the old sense of that term. Beauty is not within one's skin, nor is justice or order. One can hardly class these desires as selfish in the sense that the desire for food might be. My satisfaction with achieving or allowing justice is not within my own skin. It does not lie along my arteries. It is equally outside and inside. Therefore, it has transcended the geographical limitations of self. I just think that's like, I was like 15 learning about hippieism and wow, transcending the geographical limits of self. And isn't it true that some of the people who have made the greatest change for the better on planet Earth have had this mindset that they wanted a justice that didn't just fix their life or their kids' life. They looked for a justice that may not be done by the time their life is done. But because it was so important, they put everything on the line to work for it. Right? These are qualities that can be developed, I believe, because they're at the basis of who we are. So this is a radical view. I want to share my radical views with you. That how we tend to think about who we are and where happiness comes from may be a little not quite as functional, right? When we're a kid, we need a lot of nourishment and safety and holding from outside. When we're sick, I had the flu this summer. It was awful. And then it triggered this depression anxiety thing that I thought was gone forever. It was awful, and I needed friends to like come and hold my hand, right? Those needs don't just go away because I know about transcending personal geography. We need these things, but when, like Maslow says, we have these fortunate conditions, where we can grow to, when we're grown, right? Doesn't Paul say, when I was grown, I put away childish things? Life becomes less centered around, what do I need to get? How do I make my life run? And becomes centered around what values am I radiating forth into the world? So it's kind of a neat thing. It's not so much about self-sacrifice, because that's actually a little bit other directed. Like, oh, well, society would like, mom would like it if you, no, this is about what qualities are intrinsic to me which I must shine forth into the world. Let's see if there's a good slide in here. Oh, well, we'll just leave back to the picture up there for a minute. It doesn't come for a second, but we'll leave it up there. So I've experienced this a number of times in my life. There's a great practicality in this principle that I'm talking about. Just in case it sounds like, well, once you get yourself in a Maslow cave and meditate for 10,000 hours, then you'll long for justice. I think pretty much everyone in here longs for justice already. We're already there. But the problem is, there's only a few opportunities where you get to be reinforced in that, where you get to hang with other people who think that that's a cool thing to do and not just totally nuts. So I wanted to kind of bolster us and say that it's very practical. As we learned a few weeks ago, one of the powers of compassion, when you can generate compassion for another person, it has a tendency to completely dissolve your own anxiety in the moment, your own depression in the moment. I figured this out a while ago before I knew the science for it. I would go to classes, and at one point I was actually struggling with depression, and I would go to class, and the mindset would always be, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? Like, if you've ever been depressed in a real way, this is a recurring theme in mind. Oh my God, how am I going to get through this? You've got a phone call coming up. It's going to be great. It's your friend. Oh my God, how am I going to get through this? We're going downtown to go shopping. Oh my God, how am I going to get through this? So this was, I'm going to shiatsu class. Oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And I learned this trick that, and especially because I'm kind of an introvert, and so then, like, learning theories and stuff is great, and then there's always partner practice that you have to do. So I realized that if when partner practice came, I could, in my mind, say, I wonder how I can help this person have a great experience. I wonder how I can make things easy for them. What kind of anxiety might they be experiencing? And how can I show up to make their day great? All of a sudden, I knew exactly how I was going to get through it. And the interesting thing is I could personally go from a state of like deep dejection and fear into a state of joy and contribution and brightness, like a 180 turn. So I had to do this again on Friday night. I take a class in Monterey on every Friday, and at the moment there's a class that is at 3:30 to 5:30, and then I take a 2-hour break, and I go to Whole Foods, and I probably shouldn't eat mac and cheese, because that might be contributing to the problem. And I sit for 2 hours and I write my sermon, and then I go back at 7:30 to finish the rest of the class in Monterey before driving home at like midnight. And obviously, by the first few minutes in class, my mind was saying, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And by luck, and I think because I was writing this sermon, my mind went, oh, wait. You know there's going to be a partner exercise, and part of my mind says, yeah, that's what I'm worried about, bro. And it says, no, remember, you could be in the partner exercise for them. And all of a sudden, I'm doing this partner exercises, and have you ever noticed that, like, when you're in a conversation and you can say just the right thing that makes a person's eyes brighten up? Or like Christmas, have you ever given someone just the best Christmas gift? I mean, the gift they give you, that's a certain type of joy. Oh, cool, and of green gables, amazing. And then when you give them a gift, and they're like, there's a visible quality of heart opening, there's a totally different type of joy. Right? One, for me, it's like, oh, read a book, I'll read that later. The other one, that one stays with, that'll warm me up for days. So there's some real practicality. It's not about self-effacement. It's when we transcend the geography of the self. It's, again, what the UUs feel. We have this, they call it inherent worth and dignity. And how I'm translating that is, I think we're really meant to go this way, a little more than go this way. So this is an ancient alchemical term, be a sun and not a moon. And what they were talking about is the same thing my mom told me. You know, it's that just because all your friends are doing weird stuff doesn't mean you have to do it too. Right? We're not dependent on external light to shine our own light from within. So I think this is how humans are made. We're made to contribute. If we don't remember that, life gets a little, there are joys. A cafe mocha is pretty good. You know, walking the dog is pretty neat, right? But if you can share a cafe mocha with your friend, if you walk the dog and really focus on how happy that makes the dog, life gets about exponentially better. This is also important because it's how reality works. In Buddhist training, we do this interesting thing. It's a little weird from the outside because they start you off in Buddhist training. They're like, hey, guess what? You're gonna die. Okay. I mean, I knew that. They're like, yeah, but do you know it? I feel like I do. What if you meditate on it for 3 months? Here are, and then actually, here's a list of all the ways you can die. Contemplate. Bro, trigger warning next time. Jeez. You know, and then you get that, they're like, now, do you know it? You're like, yeah. They're like, good. Everyone you know is going to die, too. Oh, man. And then they're like, oh, this impermanence, your house could get washed away in a random flood. But I'm not in flood territory. Well, I'll make an earthquake quake for you. And it seems like a little like, are you guys just trying to make everybody be monks who have given up on the world or something like that? The trick is, though, this is always our reality. Like, we never quite know what's coming from the outside. We never quite know whether our best laid plans are going to work. My high school counselor who was on the Maslow train really didn't like it when I told her that. Like, well, what do you think you'll do with your life? Like, we have no idea where life is. I was a little bit of an existentialist. It was rough. It was rough. But there's a truth to that. And what happens is, you know, in this Buddhist training, which is not just limited to that religion, they say like, look, political regimes are going to come and go, religions are going to come and go, trends are going to come and go. And so if you base the center of your life on your house, your family, what your family thinks of you, who's in office, all of this stuff, you are also going to have to come and go all the time. It's very distressing. If you find something that's not dependent on who's around me, who's in power, what's cool, and then even to the point of, is this thing making me happy, right? Can you be happy without a morning cup of coffee? I tried it. I didn't want to, but I tried it. I'm here to tell you it is possible. It's wow, amazing, right? So we can find a type of happiness, love, and joy that doesn't depend so much upon these external conditions. You can see the opposite when you see like populist leaders, right? And you'll see a bunch of people who espouse, these are my values, and the populist leader says something completely opposite, and they all go, hooray, great leader. So, are you kidding me? We believe in the Constitution. Well, let's do this unconstitutional thing. Okay, amazing, it's our team. Because somehow they've gotten locked in this moonlight quality and have forgotten that we are sons. We are generators of value. We are generators of joy. So even to the point where we look for happiness, we want a partner who will make us happy. We want a family that's filled with love. And these are all, I think these are all great things, and sometimes you get them. But if you forget that that's what you're made of, you're missing out on the bulk of the happiness that this life has. More practical than that, and that's why Doc Brown and Marty McFly are up here on the board. So also this Friday in Taoist mysticism class, my teacher was talking about how the ancient Taoist warriors in their temples were trained to fight. And he said, you can fight in the past, but this isn't how he talks, but I'm going to be a mystic Taoist. You can fight in the past, the present, or the future. And so in this meditative combat, they realize that if you are focused on a person's strikes, if you're worried about where they're going to hit you next, you get hit a lot more often. And then you get a chance to react to those. Ow! Ugh, right? And you're living in the past. Then if you get a little more training, you can get in the present moment. Right? Like all these researchers told us is a good idea. And then, you see what's coming and you can kind of react. But what a lot of elite athletes, and even like elite business people, you might be one of them if you're incognito, have found is that with a certain type of openness in the mind, you actually sense what's coming. Right? So there are baseball players who, they wind, I don't play baseball, so I don't know how they look, but they wind up like this, right? And they'll tell you the ball looks as big as a watermelon, and time slows down. And they go, oh, I'm going to hit it that way. And they hit it right where they want it to go in these mystical moments, right? There are business people who just, they took a break for once in the last 8 years, and then while sipping a martini or something, they're like, boy, I feel like the market trend is going to go here, right? It's not necessarily mystical. The mind is collating all sorts of information that's been gathered. But when we get into this state of openness, we can see that. So what's cool is that we have the opportunity when we're living from our values, when we're living this way, we can actually have the opportunity to be living in the future. Ooh. It's a really practical application. When we're constantly wondering, oh God, what are they going to do next? In the White House, hypothetically, it feels like you're on the ropes and you're just trying to ward off every next strike that comes. When you go, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to reverse climate change with all of my friends. It doesn't even matter what the weirdos in power do, because it doesn't affect your light, your contribution, the values that you are radiating. You might change your tactics, you might change your speech, but there's nothing there's no move, there's no trick punch that they can do that will make you deviate from your course. And there's power in that. Okay, so you're living in the future. So nobody said it will be easy. It's not easy for Santa Claus to make it around the world in one night, delivering gifts to everyone, but he does it anyway. It wasn't easy for Jesus, and a Buddhist yogi master, I think, to reincarnate into a human body with all the suffering that comes with it for you. Be grateful. It wasn't easy, but he did it anyway. And I believe this is my winter solstice and Christmas inner ritual every year. I believe that these two guys did that work to show you that the best part of being human is to be a gift, is to be a light. The Buddha famously said something about, I just lost the quote, something about no matter how much darkness is present in the room, if you bring in a light, it lights the whole thing up all at once. Jesus said, don't hide your light under a bushel. So, taking a cue from Badinsky, I'll ask, what happens when we shine a light like that? When we have a love like that? It has the capacity to light up our whole world. So with that, let's sing our final song. Oh, and there's just a final. Yeah.